Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to present to you a set of slides which actually normally would have been more comfortably presented in 20, 25 minutes. So if I appear to be racing it through, just understand that. Okay. So this I've been introduced. I don't need to repeat, except to show you in a nutshell my life story. Between 60 and today, I was in Housing and Development Board and then Urban Redevelopment Authority, which is a planning department. Then I'm in the private sector and also the chairman of the Center for Livable City. And it's interesting because where I was most involved in the government, I went and grew with the government in searching for direction, consolidating our position, refining our work, and pushing for further sophistication. That experience is something that money cannot buy. So in public housing, I actually not only design, plan, but also develop and manage 23 new towns. In urban redevelopment, I revised the 1991 master plan. And currently, in my private practice, I have been doing plannings overseas, including 30 cities in China. Now, the Center for Livable City, I do it as a national service, and I would like you to know about it because it is a knowledge hub on urbanization. And every 2 years, we hold a World City Summit in Singapore. The next one is 2014 in June. And if you want to know, have a kind of good exchange, a good marketplace for urban knowledge, it's a very good place. In fact, together with some other related programs, 2012, when we held the World City Summit, we had like over 10,000 people. Okay, I'm going to take you through these stories in 5 parts. Because I think it's important. It's really intended as an encouragement to all of you that Singapore actually has come a long way. Because when this is the progress, but I'm going to just select some of these topics. Now, in 1960, when the British government left us, that was Singapore. Dilapidated, poor, and backward. Let me prove it to you. That's Chinatown. That's a famous Orchard Road. That is, in 1960, out of 1.9 million people, 1.3 million people live in this kind of environment. And then 1960 again, 1970. And then today in Singapore, I just highlight some of the things that we have achieved. Modern business center, public housing, and also very good external link in transportation system, airport, seaport, and so on. It's very important to have good external link. So, for example, this is the Central Business District. But what is equally important is that in front of this very high-rise buildings, all the buildings in the red roofs would be permanently preserved because no two cities have the same old buildings. Okay. Then, we should let this thing go by itself. Okay. Public housing, 82% of them live there. High-tech park, education, arts, cultural centers, very important public transportation and external link, airport, cruise terminals, and also international seaport. It's one of the largest in the world. But while we were looking at development, we must remember preservation. In terms of historical preservation, give you a quick feel of it. Raffles Hotel. This Imperial Hotel actually looks grander than Raffles Hotel. Old Chinese man's house is now Chicago University Management School. We preserve over 7,000 old buildings. And in terms of nature, again, if you want uniqueness in a city, protection of natural environment is the most effective way because no two cities can have the same natural environment. Singapore River, we also have jungles and swamplands, and even the undersea environment, it's healthy because we take care of the pollution issue. Now, what is important? What have we achieved in the transformation? That means we can improve our environment despite higher density, from 3,200 person per square kilometer now to over 7,000, but the environment has improved by careful planning. And it's not just my word. The Mercier has done a ranking of livability. And Singapore, as you see on the diagram, is high density and high livability. So the two are not incompatible. And then, of course, everybody wants this. In 1960, our per capita income was about $400 per person. Now it's actually, this year is 51,000 US. And apparently, we actually have outpaced USA. Now, what is the overall effect? Ecologically, we protect many things, and there's no scar in the city as you drive around. Environmentally, we have space for every need of every citizen. It's a garden city, no pollution, low noise level. In fact, these factors, to my mind, are almost like a specification for livability. And infrastructure, this is very important for business development. People come to invest in Singapore because everything works. And also, in terms of social issue, by 1985, we could claim this. No homeless, no squatters, no poverty ghettos, no ethnic enclaves. I don't think even today many cities can claim that. And economically, of course, prosperity, as you saw earlier. And 93% of the people in Singapore are homeowners. And also, quality of life is very important. It is a safe place. It's very, very important. And that's why people want to come to Singapore. It's simple to use our city. It's very easy, user-friendly, comfortable, convenient. And despite the smallness of a city, we have many choices. Just to show you what I mean by many choices, even in a tiny place like this, we have 7 airstrips, in fact, potentially 9, plus 2 can be converted, so it'll be 11, and then 30 golf courses. Golf courses are very important for business. So, yes, it's not a luxury, I can tell you that. So this gives you, it's intended to be for encouragement rather than to show off. That means any Asian city can do that. Now, the volume, the work in front of Asian cities is enormous because this one, don't challenge me, you cannot, in India, I estimate, you probably need to do 5 USA. That means for every building you have in USA now, in India you have to build 5 of them. Okay, maybe 4.8, but 5. Okay, including redoing the old cities. An old city means the building built post-war, not the historical buildings. And I think Singapore is one of the few success stories. And it's very important we must have more success stories. Now, why is it so difficult to do it well? Because in the old cities, the city grew slowly, and also population is small, building was small, and also, therefore, if you just follow the law of nature, you're more or less correct. But in modern cities, you can't do that. It grows very fast. And also, the knowledge of city planning, the understanding of city planning is not well shared by either political leaders or planners. And on top of that, population size is big, land limited, buildings are much bigger, and therefore the challenges are not the same as the old buildings, like what you see in Europe, those old historical buildings. You can't use the same old formula for the new challenges. So I'm going to just say, well, let me list out what I think the 7 key challenges for modern cities. So these are the 7, okay. The first one, it's really, I just want to repeat this, for what I said earlier. The new cities are larger, denser, faster to build, plus the pollution from industry, the automobile, the demand on automobile, and also a kind of a culture of consumerism. That means there's a sense of temporariness, which should not be the case. And therefore, we have to really learn new skills, have new understanding. The second one, I think I need not explain too much. Maybe wrong person in charge means people who are in charge do not understand what is urban planning, and therefore they make the wrong decisions. Okay, and haste and impatience is very important. Ignorance, arrogance, important. And also, of course, because of ignorance, arrogance, and the misunderstanding, they go for pretty pictures and ignoring the core issues. Now, so what I want to say is for this human foibles is that no good ideas can survive under human foibles. If you do not get a kind of good set of leaders, good ideas, good planning ideas cannot survive. That's a problem. The third challenge, somebody made reference earlier, the government has to do many things. Urbanization plus a whole lot of other things. Okay. But in urbanization, I want to highlight the hardware and software. And we cannot just gloss over hardware because hardware stays with you forever, breathe down on you, and therefore you must get it right. In fact, I want to go as far as saying that I predict with 100% accuracy that in the future, in the world, there will be 2 types of cities. One type of city drive on the left-hand side. One type of city drive on the right-hand side. You can't undo this. Okay, that shows how hard is hardware. And therefore, the conclusion is that poorly conceived hardware will cost the city and the people dearly. Therefore, we must be highly respectful of hardware. The other one is the rash and the haste. Now, this is to show, maybe people will question whether this is democratic, but it works in Singapore. And that is, this is the planning process, from vision, strategy, to decision to protect nature and history, to master planning, detailed planning, urban design, architecture, and so on. The green part, the government has to do. The black part, the people have to do. Because the government have the data, they should really make good use of data to initiate planning thinking. Yeah, macro data. And also, in my view, the duty of a government is to create a perfect stage. If a city is a cinema, it's a opera house, perfect stage, but leave the life drama for the people to act out. If you don't have a perfect stage, it hampers the life drama. But if you have a perfect stage and you also interfere with the life drama, it also would not thrive. So this is like division of labor. But in the government, you have political leaders and professionals. And master planning is that dark pink part. And it's important for professionals to interact with the politicians because you don't expect politicians to understand the skill of planning. So professionals must help political leaders to understand that so you get support from them. Now, this is a kind of ideal situation, but it happened in Singapore. Okay, the less ideal is like this. Because everybody thinks that he's an architect, whether you're trained as one or not. Everybody thinks an architect. So political leaders want to get involved with architecture. And when you get to that, you have no time to look at strategy, no time to look at master plan. So there is a vacuum there. What happened to the vacuum? The private sector will come and influence your decisions. And that happens in a lot of cities. Okay. Now, the fifth challenge is we must know what we are planning. Okay, in a city, maybe, or in a city planning, you probably can have, or you start with the building, then you have precinct, neighborhood, and so on. And how do you define them? You define them by approximately this kind of population size. Now, I'll show you what I mean by constellation city later. Okay. Now, how do you understand this? It's quite simple. Okay. When you talk to a person, first you look at the age of the person, whether he's 5 years old, 15 years old, 35 years old. When you plan the city, first look at the population size. Simple logic. And if you don't know what size of a population you're planning, you cannot make a good decision. Because why is it important? Because 2 to 3 million people or 2 to 4 million people city is like a full adult. It's like a household head, okay? And, okay, let me just go back this a bit. Then what do I mean by constellation city? And because in a place like Delhi, New Delhi, you have 18 to 20 million people. To my mind, you don't plan New Delhi as one city. You plan it as 4 or 5 cities, and they are like constellation in the sky. That means, what is constellation? Each star, each planet is complete and independent, and yet they are related. So if you can do that, you probably solve a lot of traffic problems. You probably improve the quality of life. Okay, let me just show you what I just said diagrammatically. So these are the hamlets, and a cluster of hamlet together becomes a neighborhood, a village. And cluster of neighborhood together give you a small rural town. And then, but when they grow bigger, they become a district. When they grow even bigger, they become a city. And in a city, you have all this thing here. So how do we relate the city to the countryside? This maybe give you a rough idea of their relationship. And you have to plan accordingly. So what I want to say is that you must know what you're planning before you even start doing anything. Oops, sorry. And that means you have to know because different population would put your planning object into different members of the urban clan. And therefore, it will demand you to plan differently, create different plans. This part 3 it's a little bit heavy. I'm going to go through that with you. To my mind, it's probably the most important part of my talk today. And that is, in terms of planning, this is the process. You must go through this kind of sequence in order to be effective. But when you're doing that, you also must, as you finish a master plan and you look at the macro environmental image, you must also prepare the infrastructure plan. As you go into detailed plan, you must prepare detailed infrastructure plan, as we did in Singapore. That's why everything works. And then, of course, when you go to urban design in a more localized area, you do the engineering design. And while you're doing that, you have to draw up the regulation, you have to do promotion, and then development, and then you get the architecture. Architecture is only at that point it can make sense in relation to the larger urban context. So let's see the front part. Here, these 5 boxes actually involve 3 important words in planning: value, science, and art. Value has to do with the vision. How you create a vision for the city depends on what is your personal value for the city. Science to do with the master planning and detailed planning, and also the skill to provide infrastructure master plan and detailed master plan. But the art part, meaning you have to shape your macro environment, shape your micro environment. Even if you decide not to shape it, when you do the master plan, the shape already comes out. So you better think about this. So these are the 3 parts. Now, this is value. This is science. It has to be scientifically logical. And this is art. It has to be visually attractive. Now, in terms of value, what are the skills you need? You must understand what are the basic functions to help the city exist. Then maybe essential provision for good living, and also some refinement, more sophisticated. For the science, you need to think about what are the spare parts. When you put in a land use plan, we have to ask, what are the land uses? Okay, how many? How big is each type? In order to assemble that, if we do not know what are the land uses, how do you put a master plan together? And the art part, you have a macro environmental plan, imaging, a micro one, and then urban design and so on. All these things together, hopefully, the science part gives you a perfect functioning machine for the city. The art part gives you a beautiful environment. And therefore, this is the way, these are the 3 critical words: value, science, and art. And we have to work hard on that. Now, but in Singapore, there's a very important tool that makes all these things work much better. It's public housing. Public housing policy affects the master plan. And also, by creating the new towns at the detailed plan level, we do urban design, we do engineering design, we create the regulation. And that actually facilitated us to do resettlement of squatters, create new land, clear the land in order to facilitate development. And therefore, we have development, we have architecture, we also have public housing. This is very vital too. In fact, I often refer this as the open secret weapon of our urbanization. Why open? Because everybody can see that when you go to Singapore. Why secret? Very few people understand how it works. But it's there for you to discover. Now, when the machine doesn't work, that's what you get. Flooding, pollution, congestion. And it's not just in Asia. Yesterday I saw this. LA is having a problem. Okay. Now, when you don't take care of the arts, the beauty of a city, you don't romance with the land, what happens? If you have a feeling for the land, it may look like the lady on the left-hand side. If you don't, it's on the right. It sounds like exaggeration. It can't possibly happen in urban planning. You want to bet? Okay. One city, you just crisscross, just slice the face of a city in a careless way. This is what's happening now in reality. And what does this urban machine look like to make it work? First of all, you have to think about the various factors, and you create the city master plan in the center, and after that you cascade to the regional plan, and after that to the town plan, after that to the neighborhood plans, then to the precinct plan, then you talk about designing the buildings. Very exhausting to even look at, but in Singapore we went through every step. Now, people care about urban image. What would our city look like? Okay, again, I use the iceberg example, the sky and the sea. Sky you can see, sea you can't see. So everybody wants that, a kind of urban image, unique image. But if it's just floating above the water, it will not be sustainable. To make it sustainable, you must have conservation of existing building and nature, master planning, detailed planning, you saw that earlier, urban design, regulations and guidelines. But even then, it doesn't give you the total urban image. The total urban image consists of, okay, you can see here, I can't see from here. Anyway, you've got the non-physical image, okay, non-physical image. And then also beauty, not just related to architecture. I'll explain this, and then you have heritage and nature. What do I mean by non-physical image? For example, if you go to Beijing, China, what is the unique visual impact of Beijing to you? Imperial Palace, congestion, pollution. These are non-physical but impactful. Okay, so how do you have Imperial Palace, clean air, flowing traffic? You have to start with master planning. So the footnote is that we must have total approach if you want the city to be beautiful. And non-physical image, these are the ones. And you cannot achieve this if you don't look at a master plan. And also, don't forget, there's beauty everywhere. Function is a kind of beauty. Make you feel nice, it's a kind of beauty. Engineering design, if it's done well, is beautiful. And also, don't look at iconic building all the time. Buildings in a city is like a choir. Okay, but background building plus the landmark building. Not everyone is landmark. Okay, in fact, very few modern cities look tidy. And I often tell city officials, I said, if your city is tidy and neat, you're unique. Because most cities are not tidy, not unique. And in fact, one of the reasons you like Singapore is because it's tidy and unified and neat. Okay, there are not many nice buildings there, but they're just tidy and neat. We control that. And also, do not be seduced overly by the bars and icon, because if you do that, you actually create an architectural junkyard. Now, even in architecture, don't be seduced by consumerism, because consumerism is related to fashion and ads, can be disposed. Okay, artwork, you can also hide them away, but architecture stare at you all the time. whether you like it or not, every day. So we must resist the temptation of consumerism and believe that architecture is not just exterior. The internal beauty is important. And so we not also, as modern architects or city planner, to aspire for creating our building as future heritage, rather than always looking at the past for heritage. Now this is Singapore. You can see it's new and old, and the building shape came out because we planned it very carefully. This is our Marina South. So it's like the extension of our existing CBD. It's just starting. It will take probably another 20 years to fill it up, or even longer, hopefully. Now, this one is to tell you partly my work outside Singapore, but also to say that, because there's always a question, can Singapore experience be applicable? After all, Singapore is a tiny, tiny country. But I want to say that urban planning has nothing to do with the size of a country. It's everything to do with the cities themselves. So in that sense, Singapore's experience is relevant. So I'm going to show you some of the examples according to the family of the urban clans. But because of time, I'm only showing you 3 of them. So this is a city, and so we'll create a central business plan for them. This is another city. This is Confucius' hometown, by the way. Okay. So, and we'll create a central business plan. This is in Libya. So they are a little bit different according to the condition of the countries, but the principles are the same. This one is in Russia. It's an IT park. They wanted only a park, but it's away from a city, so I convinced them to create a new town, and they are now happy with it. Okay, and of course, unlike China or India or Singapore, it's low density because that's Russia. Again, in Malaysia, although it's just across a causeway, their environment is very different from Singapore. But principles are, the use of urban principle is the same, except that the treatment of the solution have to be adapted to the location. Even architectural precinct, you don't just throw a building together. You actually plan according to certain principles. And this is my latest project. You see, I've decided that modern architects somehow have forgotten color. So I'm introducing, it's going to be completed after 7 years. It's going to be completed in July this year. So in short, I want to say that looking ahead, the reality is worrying. But I think we have to take an optimistic attitude to try to help cities. And we try to remember these 3 words to put the city right. And further, there are different types of planners. Okay, in fact, I often say that a lot of cities in the Middle East, they were not planned by planners. They were not planned by architects. They were planned by perspective artists. And that's it's true. Okay, and how can that city be functioning? Okay, but there are also urban beauticians that just powder up the problem. What we need, an urban doctor, urban mechanic to put the machine together, and maybe even better, to be able to be a prophet so that you can prophesy that when this plan is put together, will it work or will it not work? So these are the kind of planners that we need. And I think for the planners, I think the urban clan, we must pay attention. The urban machine, we must pay attention. And the urban image, we must pay attention. And to end on a high note, every city can succeed, but you think about those three critical issues. And what is more, the sooner you start, the lower is the price you pay. Thank you.
Thank you.